I don't know how it has been wherever you're coming from, Dr. Kenombongi.
Well, actually,
the weatherman has said, he's been saying it will be cold, it will be hot. Yeah. So there are different reports coming from the Met as well. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that is really an indication of what they call climate change. It's been very cool mornings, but it gets warmer as we move to the course of the day.
Mm-hmm. Right, Dr. Kanenje.
Yeah. I'm not so sure the weatherman has always gotten it right. It takes me back to the days of Gwada Francis, when one thing would be predicted and then another thing happens. Yes.
And Yubu Shaka.
He did his best, but sometimes I think we don't always get it right, and we need to be able to ensure that we communicate to the country the actual situation of the weather, because it also helps in planning. And for farmers like us from the North Rift, it's very important to know the weather patterns.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, indeed. Right, a lot has been happening also on the global arena. You can see Kamala Harris, she's in the running right now after the pullout of John Biden. And was that a Hobson choice or that was a prime choice? How do you think that will augur, especially running against Donald Trump?
It wasn't a choice.
It wasn't a choice.
It wasn't a choice. It was an inevitable, choice for them to be able to settle on, because at this time late in the game, going into primary would absolutely destroy the Democratic Party. We hope she's going to energize, some young people. Unfortunately, her positions are in lockstep with Joe Biden, and some of the things that have discouraged, especially the left-leaning Democrats and young, are not different in terms of position. So if she starts reselling herself as different on a number of critical areas, especially on foreign policy, perhaps it may add her few bongo points. Outside that right now, Donald Trump is still the prohibitive favorite to win the presidency.
Right, Kenombongi.
Well, I listened to her the other day when she had her first rally, and at least it's a relief for the Democrats, because Biden was becoming increasingly, senile, if that's a word one can use.
He seems to be really hanging by the fingernails. Yes. Everyone is really rallying for
they may lose respectively.
Yeah. So the face of Kamala being a lady is really something new in the campaign. When you compare it with the abrasive Donald Trump and the fight that he was having with Biden that was getting ugly. Whether she will make a big difference is yet to be seen. But the message she seems to deliver yesterday seemed to resonate fairly well with our audience. Let's see how the polls will turn in the next few days as the campaign continues.
All right. Okay, let's see how the weather will be before we buckle down to business and show you what we have in the dailies. All right, let's see what is fresh off the press today. And we begin with the Standard. Ghost towns as Ruto CSs intrigues deepen. Twist and turns. The military stepped in to stop protesters from marching to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as Nairobi and Migori bore the brunt of yesterday's protests by Gen Z. In Parliament, however, the list of cabinet secretaries to be vetted was tabled with shocking changes and omissions. You have a story on page 4, 6, 7, 8 and 9 of the Standard this morning. And you can see how also they came out in force marching along Moi Avenue in Nairobi during the anti-government protest yesterday. KDF soldiers as well can be seen here patrolling Pipeline Estate in Nairobi to help in quelling the riots. And on the sidebar, you have US polls. Kamala gets support, starts campaigns. That is on Wilder page on 22. That is a page that you want to follow there inside the Standard today. Shujaa face Argentina in crunch tie. Also, that is inside the Standard. Acid test for Raila in ODM over goodies. Opposition leader is facing serious rebellion both in his party and coalition since the president invited leaders for government talks. He has tried to dissociate himself to no success. And you can follow this story on page 8 of the Standard today. Puzzle of two envoys serving one embassy. Puzzle of two envoys serving one embassy. That is on page 10 of the Standard today. We shall look at that as well in light of what the president is actually doing with austerity measures. Why would we want to have two envoys serving in one embassy, or one embassy, I should say. You can follow the story on page 10 of the Standard. The Daily Nation Day of Defiance is a splash. Heavy cost. Anti-government protesters yesterday ignored President William Ruto warning and took to the streets in several towns, paralyzing business activities for the umpteenth time. In central Nairobi, pro-government supporters who seem to have the express backing of the police kept the youthful demonstrators at bay. And you have a story on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation today. And you can see one of the protesters there stoning police officers as they scamper away during the anti-government protests in Karatina town, Nyeri County. That was yesterday. They condemned the excessive use of force by the police during their peaceful demonstrations. And also on the right, you can see pro-government supporters carrying placards on Nairobi's Kimathi Street yesterday as they opposed the weekly protest by the youth. Right? That is the story that you want to follow inside the publication today. And Kamala Harris made presidential campaign debut. US Vice President Kamala Harris has become the ruling party's presumed nominee after President Joe Biden withdrew from his re-election campaign on Sunday. And you have the story on page 18 of the Daily Nation today. Let's see what the star is holding for us. Turmoil as Raila leads troops to Ruto cabinet. That is a splash today. Former PM set to be handed powerful, I should say, treasury slot among other CS appointments. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Star today. And business paralyzed as Nairobi remains demo's epicenter. And you can see a clash there. Pro-government demonstrators marching on Kenyatta Avenue to counter anti-government protesters above. You can follow the story inside the Star today. It's getting murkier when we have the protesters and anti-protesters as well, or pro-government demonstrators marching on. And we have on the side by MPs protest cuts on guards' pay and mileage allowance. MPs have protested the proposed reduction of the budget by 3.7 billion shillings. They say the budget cuts will affect key operations of the August House. Mileage allowance, payment of bodyguards and funds for running offices have been affected. The Parliamentary Service Commission said it will not be able to facilitate the selection panel for hiring new IBC commissioners following the cuts. And you have a story on page 2 of the Star this morning. Cabinet shocker as Duale and that is cabinet shocker for Duale as Miano missing from list. President William Ruto has designated, let me try and zoom in, we read together. It says here President William Ruto has designated Soipantuya as a defense CS in a dramatic change of events that saw Eden Duale sent to the Ministry of Environment. In a communication to the House Speaker, Moses Wetangula announcing the first batch of Ruto's cabinet mentioned Duale as the nominee for environment, to the dismay of members. You have a story on page 6 of the publication today. And Kenya Airways not facing EU ban, state addressing safety concerns. You have a story on page 2. That is a correct report. This is in light of the headlining story that was splashed here on the front page of Star yesterday. You can follow the story inside the Star today. People Daily, confusion over Ruto nominees. There is intrigue here. In dramatic turn, President demotes Duale to environment as his AG pick Miano's name. As AG's pick Miano's name misses on list of those to be vetted by House. You have a story on page 4 of the publication today. And 3,500 officers deployed to battle brave Gen Zs. That is a story you want to follow on page 3 of the People Daily this morning. And a very interesting picture there. As you can see, one of the protesters, or maybe just member of a public there, but about a rider, and is right there, up in flames. That is his bike. We cross over now to Uganda, where there was also protest yesterday. Corruption Shield, a very interesting headlining story there. And you can see the shield of corruption as is being put by the publication, nipped in the bud. A number of demonstrators act true to their call to march to Parliament against unbearable corruption, but find the capital, as had been anticipated, packed with a cocktail of armed to the teeth security operatives. At least 50 are arrested, charged in courts, spread between the hills, and remanded. And you have a story on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, and 14 of the Daily Monitor this morning. All right, let's see what we have in Tanzania. New data shows rise in crimes against minors. Tanzania is grappling with a sharp increase in crimes against children, with 13,748 incidents reported in 2023 compared to 11,118 cases in 2022, representing 23.7% increase. You can follow the story inside The Citizen this morning. Postmaster General TTCL Chief axed in latest changes. That is another story also. And political platform, the profile is on Kamala Harris today, stepping into the 2024 limelight, is on page 11 of today's The Citizen in Tanzania. Deal gives manufacturers 5.4 billion shillings financing options, and the story is on page 2. HIV vaccine flops in trials. That is on page 3 of the publication this morning. And the task ahead for newly appointed ministers. That is on page 3 of The Citizen. If you're waking up in Tanzania, Mwarimurutse, they say in Rwanda, good morning. Inside Rwandan JB Kalisa's tenure at helm of EABC. There still remains unfinished business at the East African Business Council. And they have a story on page 3. Yeah, right, that is JB Kalisa is the new General Secretary of EABC there. You can follow the story on page 3. And we have over 235,000 seats sitting for national exams in Rwanda. And you can see the Minister of Education, Gaspard Twagirayuzi, distributing exams papers to candidates during the official launch of the national examinations at the GS Ramera Protestant in Kisukiro district on Tuesday. You can follow the story inside the publication today. This is the Minister Twagirayuzi. You can follow that inside the publication today. And Ngoma, land consolidation boosts pipeline production. That is all tucked away inside the publication. The East African this week is all about Uganda fuel still most costly in the region as the splash. Higher logistics and pipeline costs have negated the impact of lower premiums that UNOC got from Vitol, Bahrain. And you can follow the story on page 4 of the publication today. President Paul Kagame, it is the incumbent Rwandan leader, garnered 99% of the votes cast, earning him a fresh 5-year term that analysts say allow him to cement his legacy of a prosperous country. And you have a story on page 12 of the publication this week. Ruto's fresh headache on cabinet choices. He selected 11 members, promising to form a broad-based government in the face of protests. And you have a story on page 12. And why DRC is careful around Uganda. According to UNHCR, Kampala hosts about 500,000 Congolese refugees. You have a story on page 3 of the publication today, all this week. The Economist, the latest, a ticket to where? And this is President Trump and his deputy, that is former President Donald Trump, and his deputy nominee, J.D. Vance, a ticket to where? That is what they're asking. How will you answer that question? Dr. Kanenje, a ticket to where?
To unknown.
To unknown?
To unknown, yes.
But looking at the hallmarks around it.
Yes, first of all, these
are
two fairly conservative people, even though at some point J.D. Vance, wasn't a big fan of Donald Trump. But right now they seem to be having a lot in common for some reason. They are both extremely, anti-funding of the Ukraine war. So there's a likelihood that if they assume office, the trajectory of the war in Europe perhaps may take a different path. But these are two individuals that are fairly conservative. But one thing that is sure is, that Donald Trump is going to remain unpredictable. But I think you can also bet that perhaps there could be fewer wars in the world than what we've had under the Democratic administration. Now, on the question with regard to how they're going to do with the rest of the world, of course, it remains a big question. And to the extent to which, for instance, they're going to strengthen or deepen relationship with Kenya, that had worked so hard, I think, to strengthen in the last couple of months, we also do not know that. So there is a big question mark to where.
All right. Let's invite Professor Peter Kagwanja. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah. A ticket to where?
Well, I guess this ticket is going to overturn the world in a very fundamental way in terms of the way we think. First, of course, Europe is going to really suffer greatly because Donald Trump and more increasingly his running mate are not fans of NATO. If you can remember, Trump, there's no love lost between Trump and NATO. And NATO is the one waging the war in Ukraine. So that means that that war is almost dead in water. As soon as the ticket is validated, that it is, it is Donald Trump and Vance. Obviously, the other thing is the relationship with Russia itself. It's going to take a different turn because you can already see Putin is celebrating. If you look at the communication from Russia in regard to Donald Trump. I'm not sure about China because I think Donald Trump is very much hard on China, particularly on the side of trade. Him being a businessman and being a populist, and China emerging as an economic power. So I don't think the war is at the military level, is at the economic level with China. So again, that's the line we'll have to watch. Obviously, Donald Trump is lumping home with a lot of popularity, particularly after his ear was shot. They shouldn't have done that because they have literally, they've literally catapulted him to power. With the rest controversy, because even if he had so many cases that were against him, must you kill him? That's a big question that is being asked. So we are having interesting times in our world, and when Rome is burning, I don't know what the empire should be doing, because America is our superpower, and Rome seems to be burning. I'm not sure Donald Trump is a preference for any American. Let's face it. But here you have this kind of choices. What do you do? Democracy sometimes can be a big joke.
But you can say you're not sure is the preference of many Americans. No, if the polls are neck and neck, looking at it, and even maybe ticking higher, above Joe Biden's. Maybe now Kamala Harris, we're waiting to see how that will
that's
really
that's why I concluded that democracy is a very funny joke, because sometimes they can give you options. You remember the story by, is it Aristotle, who talked about the dentist and the candy seller. And people preferred the candy seller because he'll make their mouth sweet, and the dentist will just bring pain. So they preferred the candy seller. It's the same old game in America now.
Right.
You're choosing between things. You know that after that you have no control.
And we've seen in light of talking about his year as well, that the U.S. Secret Service Director, Kimberly Shiertel, has resigned of this, right? It only happens in that democracy.
Oh, yes.
Not on this other side of our democracy.
I actually tweeted last night and said I wish we would leave from that end when the public has lost confidence in you and your work. The best thing is just to exclude yourself. It doesn't happen in this part of the world. Talk about a ticket to where. I was just wondering to myself, what then happens to our status as a non-NATO ally of the United States? You know, very much propped and thrown to us by Biden, the Democrats. If or when Trump wins, then what happens to us? To leave us in a very interesting and a rather awkward situation, because in Trump's foreign policy matrix, I don't foresee us mattering so much. You remember a few years back, he used a very interesting concept to describe the countries in Africa and the global south. And I think at the back of his mind, that is where we lie as an institution. So I think the architects of Kenya's foreign policy should get back into their thinking gear and see which direction our foreign policy, particularly to the United States, will take if or when Trump comes to the office.
Indeed. You want to comment on the resignation?
Yeah, the resignation was inevitable. It is very typical, especially in fairly developed democracies, that when the citizens they lose faith in you and ability to protect them or to perform, you have to excuse yourself and do something else. In fact, I expected she was going to resign sooner than take a few days before she resigned. I think the political pressure became just too much, but that is something expected, because that could have been Joe Biden, who's the current president. And yet someone had written on one of, I think, the newest media that we were 2 centimeters away from civil war. That's how close, it came. Because can you imagine if Trump would have been killed? And with the amount of zealotry in terms of following, especially by the right-wing, Republican conservatives. And by the way, all of them have guns and they're armed. And how could it have been? Perhaps they may not overthrow the government, but no one knows what would have happened to the United States, and there's a likelihood there could have been a lot of violence. So I think it's significant and it's important that actually she resigns. She may not exactly be culpable, but ultimately the buck stops with her.
So there are many conspiracy theories as well that maybe this was a ploy to try and bring down Donald Trump, because looking at the securities agents of the U.S., I mean, that is a top-notch, secret service in the entire world, and such slippage cannot be easily they should have scoped out the whole area. So leaving a very strategic, rooftop there that is accessible, was that by design? That's what people are asking. That's what people are actually making, all those theories, conspiracy theories around it.
Now, killing Donald Trump would have not helped Joe Biden win the election. Donald Trump would have been replaced, and the sympathy vote for the new candidate would have been overwhelming. So that would only have made things worse. And number two, those conspiracies that are saying that perhaps Donald Trump planned that and to try and get sympathy. No, you can't plan 2 inches away from your head. when you're talking about bullets. That is a little bit too close for comfort. You know? Yes.
I mean, I saw somebody saying the aim was not Donald Trump. The aim was his ear. The
name was?
His ear.
His ear, oh, okay.
You know, conspiracies can go either way. You know, if you flip what...
I think the whole idea of conspiracy about the shooting is not there. Yes. There can only be a conspiracy to eliminate Donald Trump.
Yes.
And to be sure, there is enough anger in the United States, particularly among the younger generation who are not ultra-right, to cause that. Remember, it's the same kind of feeling which was there in the 1980s about Reagan. And when an attempt on Reagan's life came, it was basically, you cannot rule us for another 4 years. Because the assassination came up in his second term. So that's one. And there have been many more assassinations. Look at the assassination of Kennedy. Actually, with the conspiracy of the forces at that time, from the writings or the publications around that. So the point is that where Donald Trump has taken American politics is almost where Kennedy had taken it legitimately, is where Reagan had taken it. It is where Abraham Lincoln had taken it. In other words, there's such a divisive issue, and that the positions have hardened so much so that somebody is willing to take the life of that candidate to see whether you can turn the tide. And this is essentially issue about Donald Trump. I am not sure it's over. I think they have to beef up his security. The attempt on his life is not over because what caused it in the first place has not been dealt with, which is the polarization of American politics and the hardening of positions to the extent that there are quite a number of people who would be willing to sacrifice their lives to see him gone. So again, it is something as simple as that.
All right, and you might want just to grab a copy of The Economist to follow that story as well, and we shall be discussing this also much later in the course of the program. Now, KTN News has obtained evidence of politicians, including a former member of the Nairobi County Assembly, suspected of dishing money to goons to disrupt demonstrations in the Nairobi Central Business District. From the evidence, KTN News has learned that the goons who used motorbikes with concealed number plates to enter into the Nairobi CBD were paid 1,000 shillings each, and the motorbikes fueled with another 1,000 shillings before entering the CBD to rob innocent residents and unsuspected Gen Z protesters. This unfolded right in front of KTN's David Moloka, who was in the CBD all day. He narrates the story.
On Tuesday morning, motorbike riders who from afar appear to be border operators, but in real sense are suspected goons on motorbikes, are seen trailing this black Range Rover while receiving instructions from whoever were in the vehicle.
Government supporters.
A few moments later, the suspected goons were spotted at a famous petrol station along Haile Selassie Avenue in the Nairobi Central Business District, where KTN News has learned that each motorbike was fueled petrol worth 1,000 shillings. After fueling, the suspected goons, who at least 3 in each motorbike, began their journey to the heart of the Nairobi Central Business District, where Gen Z demonstrators had planned to stage another round of protests against President William Ruto's administration. But before undertaking what they had been hired to do, the suspected goons on motorbikes with concealed number plates received another set of instructions from the same black Range Rover that they were seen riding alongside in the morning. It is here where KTN News has learned that the alleged goons also received 1,000 shillings each and also given the green light to roam in one park in the Nairobi Central Business District, thus disrupting the protests that entered their 5th week on Tuesday. KTN News has done a search on the owner of the Range Rover 2000 model on National Transport and Safety Authority's portal and has established that the vehicle belongs to one Mark Ndongo Nganga. On doing a further probe into who Mark Ndongo Nganga is, KTN News has learned that Mark Ndongo is a former member of the Nairobi City County Assembly who represented Maringo Hamza Ward in City Hall from 2017 to 2022 before unsuccessfully vying for the Makadara MP seat in the 2022 general elections. It is, however, unclear if Mark Ndongo himself was behind the wheel of his Range Rover or was the one dishing money and issuing instructions to the suspected goons in the 2 occasions where people in the Range Rover were seen interacting closely with the goons on bikes. In 2 rounds, the suspected hired goons snatched phones and other accessories from unsuspecting residents and innocent demonstrators.
Mimi naitwa Sami. Na mimi nilikuwa nachukua video. Na walikuwa kidogo tu hivi wapite na simu yangu. Wamepita nayo nilikuwa nimeshika na nguvu.
Walikuwa wanawekewa mafuta ya dhao, wanapewa dhao. So badala ya hiyo wanaanza kusnatch simu kwa barabara wakikimbia. Town hawafanyi town. Ukiangalia namba plate zao zinasoma Kangemi.
In their 3rd round, the goons who had earlier been mistaken to be border riders who operate in the CBD saw fire from the actual CBD border operators who set ablaze at least 2 motorbikes. At least 3 suspected goons were injured in the confrontation, among them this man who was beaten to a pulp before being rescued by police officers who carried him to a waiting police vehicle and whisked him away to prevent the angry mob baying for his blood from lynching him.
Heshima sisi kama watu wa Nduthi wanatuharibia heshima hii town sana. Watu tunapiga haso lakini sasa ile wanafanya hatufurahi.
The 2-hour confrontation between border riders and demonstrators on one side and the suspected goons on the other side forced Nairobi police boss Adamson Bungei to intervene. The Nairobi police boss spoke for minutes with the border operators who wondered why police officers watched at a distance as the suspected goons made rounds in the CBD, waving pro-government placards, a move that forced the operators to take matters into their own hands. After Bungei left, protesters who until 1 p.m. had not taken to the CBD's streets appeared in their numbers, and unlike previous protests, police officers did not attempt to tear gas them or disperse them with water cannons that were nowhere to be seen in the CBD on Tuesday.
I wouldn't call this a truce, but there's some sort of truce between the police and us, peaceful protesters. And I'm just saying, this is an example of how a peaceful protest should be. Inafaa kuwa hivi. You see, no one should die. No one should have gunshot injuries. No one should be paralyzed, following the events. Now, so I'm just saying, this is what we were asking from the beginning.
In yet another week, the Gen Z demonstrators on Tuesday took to various streets of the Nairobi Central Business District to demonstrate against President William Ruto's government. And this coming days after President Ruto himself said enough is enough with the Gen Z demos, the demonstrators have also said enough is enough with his government. David Muthoka, KTN News, Nairobi.
Officers from the Kenya Defence Forces were forced to leave the barracks to help the anti-riot police quell protests in Pipeline Estate, located next to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where anti-government protesters had vowed to occupy. And as Gloria Milemo now reports, unlike in the recent past, where the protesters have engaged anti-riot police in running battles, in Pipeline, they seemingly decided to tread carefully with the military.
These were the scenes that characterized the renewed anti-government protests in Embakasi's pipeline estate Tuesday. The heavy deployment of Kenya Defence Forces officers, perhaps serving as a warning that the government was not taking to chance the security of the capital city's international airport JKIA that the youth-led protesters had vowed to occupy. Alongside the anti-riot police, the military personnel kept guard to deal with any eventuality that posed a threat to the country's main entry point. Even so, the protesters, whose patience seemed to have worn thin, attempted a march to the cordoned government facility, only to be repulsed by the officers who had blocked the busy Airport North Road they had planned to access the airport through. Within no minutes, the irate protesters turned the area located next to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport into a battlefield, engaging the security officers in running battles. They barricaded the busy outer ring road, causing a traffic snarl-up that lasted for hours before the road was eventually cleared. The officers also combed the estate for any pockets of assembly that would result in the use of alternative routes to access JKIA. Unlike the previous protests, where protesters have lost their life, the demonstrations in Embakasi did not end with any fatalities or injuries. The protests that now enter their 6th week have so far seen at least 50 people killed and more than 400 injured, according to the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Gloria Milimu, KTN News.
Meanwhile, President William Ruto has made a surprise change in his new list of cabinet nominees, swapping Eden Duale and Soipan Tuya in their dockets. This means Eden Duale will become Environment Cabinet Secretary, while Soipan Tuya will take over at the Defense Ministry if they are approved by Parliament. And as senior political affairs reporter Daniel Karuki now reports, questions have emerged on what could have necessitated the changes that caught legislators and Kenyans by surprise.
On the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists.
The National Assembly resumed its sittings Tuesday afternoon after a 3 weeks recess. The last they were in the chambers was when the bicameral house was invaded by Gen Z protesters. During the recess, much has happened, part of it dissolution of the cabinet, and on Tuesday, Speaker Moses Wetangula had a communication from the President.
From His Excellency the President is on nomination of persons for appointment to the offices of Cabinet Secretaries.
The Speaker announcing Eden Duale had been reassigned from the Defense Ministry to the Environment docket.
Honorable Rosalinda Soipan Tuya, AGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Defense. Honorable Aden Bare Duale, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. Order, honorable members, order.
Wetangula's announcement caught the legislators and Kenyans by surprise, as no one was aware of President William Ruto's amendment to the list. The MPs forcing Wetangula to repeat the statement again, claiming he was reading the wrong list.
Order. Order. I shall not repeat. Order.
I find, and you really need to clarify this, why the list you have read to us is different from what the President read.
What you communicate is what is communicated, and that is what is final. But I'm not sure whether this list is the same one, Mr. Speaker. We cannot change your records in Parliament, but we are really in doubt whether this is the real one. But we shall wait.
The changes have left tongues wagging, with questions now emerging on what could have led to the unannounced changes. This coming several days after videos of alleged party held in Isli went viral as they celebrated Duale, whom they termed Simba, saying he was back. Duale was also congratulated by the Ministry of Defense Somalia, which said, and I quote, MOD congratulates Duale for his reappointment. KDF is a valued partner in our joint fight against terrorism. We look forward to strengthening the long-standing ties between our two nations. End of quote. In response to the reassignment, Duale took to his X account, posting, and I quote, "I am grateful to President William Ruto for reassigning me from the Defense Ministry to the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry." He continued, "Indeed, and it may be that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you like a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows, but you do not know." Quran 2:216. End of quote. The name of Rebecca Miano, who was nominated for the Attorney General post, was also not on the list. The vetting of the CSs is set to begin anytime, with MPs warning they will ensure CSs who do not meet the threshold are not approved.
This time, Mr. Speaker, and this time, Mr. Speaker, I repeat for the third time, if somebody is not suitable, if somebody is not capable, if somebody doesn't have the capacity, we are going to throw him out, Mr. Speaker. We do not also expect that we are going, or His Excellency the President is going to appoint angels into cabinet. So, in as much as Honorable Junet is here threatening those nominees, even him, Honorable Junet, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
All cabinet nominees will undergo vetting, including those who are reappointed. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Nairobi.
Well, still on cabinet, confusion continues to rock Raila Odinga's ODM party on whether or not to work with President William Ruto's government. Party leaders appear divided over the issue, with ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna emphasizing what the party will not in any way enter into negotiations for a coalition or political arrangements, while the national chairman, John Berdy, has backed plans for a working relationship with the ruling Kenya Kwanza coalition. The same scenario has presented itself on the larger Azimio coalition, whose leaders remain divided over this issue. Jeff Kiru has more.
When President William Ruto dissolved his cabinet, the head of state indicated that his next cabinet will be broad-based. A move that has political players anticipating the inclusion of members from the opposition side, causing confusion within the rank and file of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya affiliate parties. ODM party leader Raila Odinga, who has been a serious critic of President William Ruto's government, has in the past few weeks been sending mixed signals about working with President William Ruto's government. A move that has seemingly thrown his foot soldiers pulling in different directions. In a statement Tuesday, ODM Party Secretary General Edwin Sifuna said the party will not be negotiating with President Ruto for any coalition or political arrangement. Some members of the party, including Chairman John Berdy, says it is about time the former Prime Minister works with the government.
I want to say those who are in a rush to join Ruto, that Ruto is a passing cloud. I am saying that without a fear of contradiction. I'm urging everybody that joining Ruto is a disaster, is an abomination. It cannot work.
I am in total disagreement with James Agriole. He's my senior, he's my friend, but where he's wrong, I will tell him you are wrong. You cannot tell us that we cannot dialogue, that we cannot talk with Ruto, we cannot talk as Kenyans. What is the alternative? We cannot play politics of populism. We cannot play politics of theory. We have been playing politics of theory since independence. That is why we have got these things wrong.
Within the week, as soon as tomorrow, we want to see those other appointments Baba was to forward to him. And we want all of them approved. And Honorable Speaker, if that can happen, then we are going to push this thing very fast. We cannot leave anybody out. And Honorable Speaker, let me send a warning. We want to tell people sending conflicting positions from the ODM to remember that they are on an interim position in those positions.
But even as a section of ODM diehards are warming up towards President Ruto's side, the Azimio la Umoja counterparts in Kalonzo Musyoka's Wiper Party are adamant.
Wanaotaka kwenda waende kivyao kama individuals. Waache kugawanya Azimio, waache kugawanya members wetu. Wao wana uwezo wa kwenda kivyao, lakini sisi tuko imara na hatutageuka, and we are not boarding in the existing government.
Atupandi na atutaki na atufikiri na atuangali. Kwa hivyo, if you want to appoint Bwana Ruto, appoint your full cabinet tomorrow, but forget about us. We are not interested at all, at all.
And with President Ruto expected to name the remaining members to his cabinet this week, a section of his allies in the Kenya Kwanza coalition insists the CSs must disassociate with political affiliation in dispensing their duties.
Anybody who is given an opportunity as a cabinet secretary, whether you are a Masai, or a Bukusu, or a Luo, you are not going to serve the interest of your party or the interest of the region where you come from, but you are going to wear a hat of Kenya, and you are going to develop each and every part of this country without any undue discrimination.
Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
All right, those are the intrigues that was shaping, or they were shaping up yesterday's event, looking at the protest and also the resumption of a National Assembly in regard to the finance bill and also the cabinet secretaries, that nominees that were presented or listed up by the president, are waiting for the other part of the coalition to present theirs as well. And that is what we want to actually look on, first of all. And I think pivotally for this particular conversation will be the aspect of looking keenly on what is happening in the Ministry of Defense now that we have the president swapping again from his current or from his recent appointment or reappointment of Eden Duale back to his docket in the Defense Ministry to Environment. Your reaction, Peter Kagonja?
Well, the papers are clear at the back, and I think that's also true. I'm talking about the nation. Why Duare was dropped from the defense docket. Obviously, the Ministry of Environment is really what is being said. Simba is back to the forest. It's very interesting because I think it's a forest for Duare. He's not cut for that kind of thing, but he was courteous basically to appreciate the reshuffle, the kind of the movement. But it also shows the confusion within the government, and I think we need to come out clearly as Kenyans, really, without appearing to be too radical. There's nothing radical about confusion. And confusion is confusion. In the first place, you return the people you had sacked 1 week ago. Then, before the decision is made, there is a swapping. So there's a lot that needed to have been studied, and we had time to study what is good for Kenya. Remember, we are not doing this because we want. We are doing this because the country is in distress.
Yes.
And the country is in distress because our young people are not happy with the way we, the older generation, are doing our business. And it behooves us to take some time and think and have what you can call permanent solutions. Because this is an intergenerational crash. If you wish, it's a crash of generations. And you cannot win, because you can never win against your children. Because you will go before them. They will remain. Therefore, there is no victory for you. Hata kama ni moja atabaki, even this one who remains. He represents that generation. So, in a sense, there was much to think about. But then, even if you don't invest thinking in any other area or any other docket, for heaven's sake, Kenya's national interest #1 is security and sovereignty of the country. It's listed. We teach it in the universities. national interest number one is security. Therefore, the Ministry of Defense is not just a sensitive ministry. It's a ministry where you should invest every element of our national patriotism, every element of our non-impartial, non-partisan attention, where we should invest every sense of our own interest as a country. And therefore, I think first it's an indictment on the government to have even subjected the Ministry of Defense to this kind of feeling, or this kind of public spectacle in the first place.
And it's a public spectacle indeed if you look at that editorial cartoon that we do have there. If you can see it, the swapping now of the shots in the football field.
Yeah.
We have Soipan now, removing her t-shirt to give it over to Eden Duale.
Yeah, and it's really an act of non-patriotism. It can never be unpatriotic as such that you subject your top priority, your national interest, to ridicule. So that is one. It's not secret. You don't have to be in the securities to know that the generals were not happy with that Ndwari. Given who I am, so I'm.
You're privy to this information?
Yes, I got. People give me a lot of phone calls. Professor, can you see this? They were not happy with the reappointment. They were happy. Why? It's not just about of a bearing, but you have no scruple. You have no understanding of the sensitivities of that Ministry of Defense, and why Kenya has not had a coup for 61 years, successful coup. Why have we not had it? Because there is a good understanding that the men in uniform and the men in guns will stay in their barracks, but you are not going to interfere with them. They, in turn, will subordinate themselves to what we call civilian oversight. And that civilian oversight is by two civilians, the minister and the PS. But the minister does not run the military. The minister does not run the military. He's simply, she's simply exercising oversight. Two, the PS does not run the ministry. And any time in the history of our country where the PS has tried, or the CS has tried, minister has tried to get too much into the affairs of the military, there has been that insensitivity, and they have left. And most of the reshuffles you have seen in the midstream is because the minister is getting too close to the business he or she is not trained for. Remember, these are people who come from the lowest of the ranks, and they rise up in the discipline. That they are the best of us, if you wish, in terms of the meritocracy, in terms of the training and all. And therefore, it is a ministry that requires investment in terms of thinking. Remember, also the oversight. It's the other side of the government, the National Intelligence Service, overseeing all that. And therefore, there are all these sensitivities, and that's what was not put into account. And the problem of using politics to reward your friends. The problem of using politics. And in the process, you also put your friends in bad light. Duare is a gentleman. He's a great man. I know him for long. And somehow, there must have been good thinking. And the question is, even with the new appointment, even with the new appointment, are we right? Even with the new appointment, are we right?
All right, but okay. Even with the new appointment, are we right? Is a
yes,
good
the replacement
question.
of Duare. Is it the best option for that replacement?
All right.
Coming from where we are coming, is she the best replacement? I reserve my opinion, but this is a debate we have to open up. Given that it's not about us, we are where we are because the younger generations have pushed us there. Are we doing it with that in mind, that the younger generation is watching us? If you score into the social media, as we are doing now, you go to the social media and you find the debates that are taking place. Please, for heaven's sake, we can mess up with everything else about ourselves, but let us not mess up with the defense, for God's sake. It is our last frontier.
All right. At that particular juncture, I think we need to take a short break right now without probing question. Even with the appointment of Soipan to here, or not, is that the better option? We probe more deeply and drill deeper to actually get answers from that particular question. We'll take a short break. You're watching Global Today here on Morning.